On May 14th, 1973, America's first space station reached orbit already wounded. Skylab had lost the shield that was supposed to protect its workshop from the sun. One of its two main solar array wings was gone. The other was still attached, but jammed. A station built for people to live and work inside was now overheating and nearly powerless before its first crew had even left Earth. NASA delayed that crew for 10 days. When Pete Conrad, Paul Weitz, and Joe Kerwin finally launched, they carried an emergency parasol designed, built, and tested in 6 days. It would be pushed through a small scientific airlock and opened from inside Skylab. That sounds like the rescue. It was only the first part of it. The shade could cool the workshop. It could not give the station back the power it had lost. This is the story of how Skylab began to come apart during its own launch. Why the first expedition arrived with a repair kit instead of a normal first day, and what it took to turn a damaged shell back into a place people could inhabit. The original plan had been clean and deliberate. Skylab was launched on top of a Saturn V, the giant rocket that had carried Apollo missions toward the moon. Its orbital workshop was meant to reach orbit intact. Only then would its micrometeoroid shield and its large solar array wings be deployed. The shield was not just armor against tiny impacts. It also served as thermal protection. The arrays would supply the electrical power for the station. That sequence mattered because Skylab was not a capsule built for a short visit. It was a workshop, a laboratory, and living space arranged around the idea that crews could stay. It needed its outer skin to keep solar heating under control. It needed its wings to turn sunlight into usable power. Those were not optional extras bolted onto the outside. They were part of the condition that made the inside possible. That is the quiet danger in the phrase, reached orbit. Orbit is not a finish line if the vehicle reaches it missing the systems required for the next act. Skylab had arrived where it was supposed to be, but arrival was only useful if the workshop could be cooled, powered, entered, and kept working. The launch had delivered the structure. It had not delivered a ready station. The station's two main wings were supposed to unfold after the violence of ascent was over. The shield was supposed to remain in place until the station was safely in orbit. In the normal picture, those systems would disappear into the background. Nobody would have needed to think about them after the launch. Their failure forced every later decision into the open. For the first minute of launch, there was no visible drama for the people following the vehicle from the ground. The Saturn V kept climbing, but telemetry later showed that about 63 seconds into powered flight, Skylab's micrometeoroid shield had deployed or come loose far too early. Instead of waiting safely until orbit, it was exposed to the force of ascent. That is how this kind of failure first exists, not as a clean image, but as a problem hidden inside a stream of measurements. The rocket was still rising. The mission still had to reach orbit. Only afterward could the telemetry be read as a sequence of consequences, one event opening the way for another, while the vehicle was still far beyond the reach of anyone who could touch it. The damage did not end there. The departing shield left debris in the wrong place. One of the two solar array wings became jammed. The other had partly opened when it should not have. At 593 seconds into the flight, exhaust from the S2 stage's retro rockets struck that partly deployed wing and tore it away. That distinction is worth holding on to. It is tempting to tell this as one violent motion. The shield came off and took the panels with it. The records describe a more cruel sequence. The lost shield began the crisis. Debris restrained one wing. A later blast of exhaust removed the other. By the time Skylab reached its planned orbit, it had the outline of a station, but not the protection and power system its crews needed. NASA's post-flight investigation found a most likely aerodynamic failure chain. The report considered pressure inside an auxiliary tunnel of the shield as part of that explanation, along with the loads of launch. But most likely is the right phrase. The investigation did not turn every small initiating detail into certainty. It did establish the larger truth. This was a launch failure with a physical sequence, not an unexplained disappearance, and not a hidden act. The evidence after orbit made the consequence impossible to soften. Skylab's main solar array system was producing only 25 watts. Inside the unprotected workshop, temperatures were rising. Controllers faced a problem that sounds almost domestic until you remember where it was happening. How do you keep a room usable when its sunshade is gone, its power supply has failed, and the only way to reach it is to launch people into orbit? Heat and power were linked, but they were not the same problem. The missing thermal shield let the workshop absorb more of the sun's heat. The damaged arrays left the station short of the electricity it was meant to have. A solution that addressed one might leave the other untouched. That distinction would decide the entire rescue. There was also no reason to treat the scheduled crew launch as a routine calendar item anymore. The people who would fly to Skylab were not being sent to open a new home in the usual sense. They were being asked to reach a station whose first requirement was no longer science, or even normal activation. First, it had to become a place where a crew could stay. The first crew had originally been scheduled to follow almost immediately. Instead, NASA postponed its launch until May 25th. Those 10 days were not a pause in the ordinary opening of a space station. They were the interval in which the opening had to be reinvented. There were several ideas for cooling Skylab. The choice that survived had to meet hard limits. It had to be ready quickly. It had to fit inside the command module. And it had to be deployed from inside the workshop without requiring the crew to perform an EVA just to put up a sunshade. The answer became known as the parasol. Jack Kinsler's team developed it as a replacement thermal system, something compact enough to carry to the station, then open through the scientific airlock. Its design, fabrication, and testing were carried out in 6 days. That is not evidence of astronauts improvising an umbrella after arrival. The work was done on the ground, under a deadline that was already written into the launch schedule. The word parasol can make the device sound almost playful. The constraint behind it was not. This shade had to travel inside a spacecraft already built for another mission. It had to be stowed before launch. It had to be handled by a crew that could not simply step outside and arrange it in open space. And it had to protect a workshop that was already hot before anyone had moved into it. That is why the choice was so revealing. NASA did not select the grandest possible repair. It selected the one that could be ready, carried, and deployed with the hardware and crew it actually had. In a crisis, the best answer is sometimes not the one that restores everything. It is the one that makes the next necessary action possible. The parasol was a practical answer to a specific problem. It could cast shade over the exposed workshop. It could be unfolded from inside. It could buy back thermal control, but it was never a substitute for a solar array wing. The remaining wing was still stuck outside, and the wing that had been torn away was not coming back. That left the first crew with 2 jobs braided together. One was to find out what the station actually looked like after the launch. The other was to make it safe enough to enter. They would still be Skylab's first expedition, and they would still go on to activate the station and work there. But before any normal first day could begin, the station had to be rescued from the condition in which it had arrived. On May 25th, Conrad, Weitz, and Kerwin launched aboard Apollo. About 6 hours later, they flew around Skylab before docking. The view confirmed the damage the telemetry had suggested. The protective shield was gone. One solar wing was missing. The other was only partly deployed. For the crew, that pass around the station was the moment the problem changed from a reconstruction on the ground into a visible object beside their spacecraft. There was no need to supply their thoughts for the scene to carry weight. The station was there. The missing shield was there. The damaged wings were there. The work planned for the inside now depended on the condition of the hardware outside. That fly around is the image that keeps the whole story honest. Skylab had not vanished. It had not exploded. Its gold-colored workshop was still there, floating in orbit. But the hardware that made that workshop habitable had been stripped away or trapped in the wrong position. From a distance, the station looked both intact and unfinished. It had reached the place it was meant to live, yet it could not do the work it had been made to do. The crew tried to free the jammed array on their arrival day. Weitz made a stand-up EVA attempt from the Apollo spacecraft, trying to cut through debris and release the mechanism. It did not work. The obstruction held. That first failure stripped away any remaining fantasy of a quick correction. The crew had arrived with the parasol, but the one solar wing that could still be recovered was not ready to cooperate. The station now asked for patience in the hardest possible form, not waiting passively for a result, but proceeding with the one repair that could be done while carrying the cost of the one that could not. That failure matters because it kept the two problems separate. A successful shade would make the inside less hostile. It would not change the fact that the station's remaining main solar wing was still mechanically restrained. Cooling could buy time. It could not manufacture electrical power. After the inspection and the unsuccessful first attempt on the array, the crew docked and entered the workshop. NASA's historical account describes the interior as reaching 130 degrees Fahrenheit. The parasol was no longer a clever contingency waiting in a checklist. It was the next necessary action. The following morning, the crew assembled the parasol and deployed it through Skylab's scientific airlock. The folded device passed through the small opening, then opened outside the workshop. Its job was simple enough to picture. Place shade between the exposed surface and the sun. This was the high-stakes scene the emergency design had been built to reach. The device did not arrive as an abstract proposal in a meeting room. It had crossed from the ground, through the Apollo spacecraft, into the workshop, and then through the scientific airlock. Every constraint in its design had led to that one physical act. When the parasol opened, it changed the station immediately in the way that mattered most. Not because a damaged launch had been reversed. It had not. The missing wing was still missing. The jammed wing was still jammed. But sunlight was no longer falling on the workshop in the same unprotected way. The crew had given the station back a measure of shade. The result was real. Temperatures began to fall. Within 3 days, the workshop had become comfortable. The emergency shade did what it had been designed to do. That first payoff earned something more valuable than a triumphant headline. It gave the crew room to begin the work that had been waiting behind the emergency. They could enter a workshop that was no longer being driven toward an unusable temperature. They could start activation. They could begin to turn the station from a damaged object into a place with a future. But the power question did not fade just because the room was cooler. A person can recognize the difference without needing a lesson in spacecraft systems. Shade can make a room bearable. It does not switch the lights back on. Skylab had escaped the first immediate threat while still carrying the evidence of the second. And this is where the familiar version of the story can become too neat. If the story ends with the parasol opening, it turns Skylab into a single miraculous save. It was not. The workshop was cooler, but the station was still missing one main wing and still waiting on the other. The crew had made the room possible to enter. They had not yet restored the condition that would let the station work as planned. Look at the order of events. First, a station reaches orbit with its thermal shield gone and its power system crippled. Then, an emergency team on Earth builds a shade that can fit into the spacecraft already assigned to the mission. Then, the arriving crew sends that shade through an airlock and sees the temperature begin to come down. Each step is a gain. None of them changes the jammed wing outside. The remaining repair would come on June 7th. Conrad and Kerwin went outside Skylab to deal with the array that Weitz had not been able to free from the Apollo spacecraft. This was not a symbolic spacewalk. The wing was still held by a restraining strap, and the hardware around it had to be dealt with directly. By then, the nature of the mission had changed again. The crew was no longer trying merely to enter an overheated workshop. The parasol had made that possible. Now, 2 astronauts had to go outside and recover the one source of main array power that remained. The repair could not restore the lost wing. It could only determine whether the surviving one would stay trapped or finally begin doing its job. The documented procedure was physical and specific. Conrad and Kerwin cut the restraining strap. They used a rope to pull the surviving wing open. When it deployed fully, the array began generating power. Only here does the shape of the rescue become clear. The parasol did not restore the wing. The EVA did not replace the missing shield. One action made the workshop livable by bringing down the heat. The other returned usable power by freeing the one wing that remained. The station had to be recovered in parts because it had failed in parts. That is the change in meaning. At the beginning, the damage can look like the end of a station before its first crew arrives. By the end, the same missing shield and damaged wings describe something more exact. A station that could be brought back only by respecting the order of its needs. First, a crew needed a place that could be lived in. Then, the station needed the power to become the working outpost it was meant to be. That is why the first crew's mission feels so different from the tidy phrase, "The parasol saved Skylab." The parasol was indispensable, but it was not the whole answer. The repair was not one dramatic gesture. It was a sequence of constraints met in the order reality demanded. Protect the inside, then restore what could still be restored outside. NASA's investigation could explain the main chain of the launch failure. The emergency response could explain how the workshop was cooled. The EVA record could explain how the surviving solar array was freed. There is no need to invent a concealed cause to make this story large. The scale is already there. A new station arrived at its destination before it was ready to receive the people who had been sent to occupy it. The records do leave a useful boundary. They support the launch sequence, the emergency decision, the parasol deployment, and the later EVA. They do not need to carry invented panic in mission control or private heroics inside the crew cabin. The physical facts are enough. A workshop overheats in orbit. A planned crew launch is delayed. A folded shade is built in 6 days. A damaged wing refuses to open. Those are not decorations around the story. They are the pressure that gives it shape. After the thermal problem was addressed and the remaining array was deployed, Skylab 2 could proceed with station activation and science. 2 more crews would later occupy the station. That later success does not erase the first view from Apollo. 1 wing absent, 1 wing trapped, the outer shield gone. What changed was not the fact of the damage. It was what the crew and the ground teams managed to do with the surviving pieces. The workshop did not become a normal place because the launch had gone according to plan. It became usable because the plan was interrupted, the limits were understood, and 2 separate repairs were carried through without pretending that either one solved everything. The return image is small enough to hold in your mind. A folded parasol passes through a scientific airlock and opens into sunlight outside a damaged workshop. At that moment, 1 surviving wing is still waiting in the dark, but the temperature is falling inside. The place is beginning, carefully, to admit people